Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details. With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Welcome to the Wrap Podcast, the place to catch up on all the regional and national rugby in Wales. You can find us on all the usual social media platforms and message us through there if you want, or you can email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. So all the boring stuff out the way, let's talk rugby.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Wrap Podcast with me, Lee G, and joining me as always my co-hosts Carwyn and Jamie. Good evening, gents.
Good evening. How are you?
It is a good evening, and it is a good evening this evening.
Absolutely.
Smiles everywhere. So Harley is still out in France, sunning it up, drinking excessive amounts of it. He's promised that he'll join us for Drink of the Week. He's going to go through the wine range in France and work out what's best, and then let us know when he comes back. So in Harley's place this evening is well-known Welsh rugby journalist Simon Thomas. Evening, Simon. How are you?
Hello, thanks for having me on again, guys.
Pleasure to have you back. So when was the last time we had you on? What were we talking about the last time? Was it Autumn Internationals you were last on?
It's all a blur in Welsh rugby, my friend. It
was the Six Nations, wasn't it? I think we talked about France and Wales and the Six Nations, if memory serves me right.
It's one of those
dark days.
Yeah, very different days back then. Right, well, we got a lot to get through tonight then, gents. So let's crack on nice and quickly with Drink of the Week. So, Carwyn, what have you got Drink of the Week, mate?
Well, I'm still suffering from the night before the Welsh game. So I am on a cup of tea, but in my cup, which is a tribute to the Welsh front row from last night. There we go. Good. That's all I can say about Drink of the Week. It's just a nice cup of tea.
Okay. Jamie, what about you, mate?
Well, I haven't had a Tiny Rebel beer for a while, so I thought I'd get back on the Tiny Rebel. I've got a new beer. It's called Sweet Chin Music. It's a strawberry Swiss meringue sour, 4.8%. And I mean, it does what it says on the tin. It's a sour beer that tastes of strawberry. But it's
when you
okay.
held it up first, I thought it was a can of Pepsi first, the old cans when you first pulled it up.
Retro can.
Absolutely.
They don't get any better, Jim. The cans get more interesting.
Look at the colour.
Oh
my Lord.
It's nice. It's a nice drop. I like it.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. So, Simon, if you had to have a drink of the week, what would your drink of the week be?
Well, generally, I have whatever Trevin Pops and Ops on Whitchurch Road recommends for me. I place my faith in him completely. But given the weekend, I think it'd have to be a pint of brains for the just as a tribute to the intelligence and control of that Welsh performance last night. It was certainly one for the brains trust in the coaching and the playing side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to bring it back down to Jamie's level. So I went to a food festival on Saturday, and managed to find one decent brewery. So I've got 5 beers from them, and it's the Little Goat Brewery, and this week's beer is called a Sloppy Goat, which is an American pale ale and infused with Sloppy Joe's street food. I don't know how, but there we go. It's actually really nice. It's a really nice beer, and you can see through it, Jane, and all sorts of stuff. Look at that, man. You can.
I like the look of that. Yeah,
So
I like the sound and the look.
You have that. You have one for me, mate.
I will do, but I very nearly bought some of your Pembroke cider stuff that you were talking about before. But the white.
You do know why some beers are clear and some are cloudy, don't you?
No.
Isn't it to do with fish? Something to do with the fish.
Someone on the panel knows this stuff. It's all down to fish guts.
That's what it is.
All down to fish guts.
Yeah.
Really?
There's a subject for a podcast another day.
I used to have actually, I've got a mate who used to run a brewery, and I was talking to him, and I said it, and I thought he was taking the piss. I thought
No.
And he's like, yeah, we just chuck fish guts in, and it sucks all of the stuff out, and you're like, yeah, I'm never drinking that stuff ever again.
You enjoy your beer, James?
yeah.
Will do.
Yeah. Right, let's move swiftly on to news desk. Not much news desk this week, James, but what have we got, mate?
Yeah, very little in the way of news, but the Dragons have released their new home kit for the season that was launched today. So the primary colours are black and amber to represent the city of Newport and its history. Plus, you got the blue of Monmouthshire and Gwent on there to represent the region. So what do I think of the new kit? I love it, quite frankly, because at last the Dragons have a kit with identity, and it doesn't resemble an Ospreys knockoff kit, which they have done for the past couple of seasons. I've been pretty disappointed with our home jerseys the past couple of years because there's been no thought or real imagination put into it. I think they've been quite bland. But this kit is beautiful. I absolutely love it. And it's divided opinion. You know, you got Newport IFC supporters, the old school ones, they're pretty disgruntled because we got on black and amber. And I've seen a few comments from supporters up in Gwent who are saying it's too Newport and they don't like it. But I don't care about all that. I'm not interested. I think it's a lovely, lovely kit. And I think it's going to sell very well indeed. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to popping down the shop and getting my hands on that one.
Who's the main sponsor?
We're still Compede.
Okay. So Macron haven't joined your ranks.
No, with
well.
VX3, no, we're not having Macron. Absolutely not. We're sticking with VX3, who are doing a really good job for us, and long may it continue.
And is it just a home kit, Jim? There's no away kit yet, is it? No change kit, I should say.
I believe it's been announced later this week. I think it's Thursday or Friday. So people moaning about they're looking too Newport. I think the away kit is going to incorporate more of Gwent in the design, which is fair enough. I think that's the right way to go. I think the club have been very bold in going black and amber because, you know, whether people like it or not, the Dragons are a Newport team. They are based in Newport and they represent Newport and Gwent. So I think it's right they've gone black and amber, and I think it's a bold, inventive kit. And, you know, I think the club and VX3 have done very well with it. Just on a side note as well, the Dragons and the Ospreys are playing in a friendly this weekend at Rodney Parade. That's a 3:00 kickoff. So any supporters who are able to go to that, get down here. I think kids are £1 as well, which is really, really good. So hopefully there'll be a decent crowd there.
And Scarlets are playing Cardiff on Friday night in Cardiff as well.
Oh, they are they? Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
There's not been a lot of publicity for either of them.
No.
There we go. That's
not
pre-season, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. So in other news then, I believe there's a new book coming out, Simon.
Yeah,
would you like to tell our lovely listeners about it?
Yeah, well, just before that, I'll also add in, just you mentioned about the lack of publicity for the friendlies. I actually went down to the Arms Park on Saturday prior to the Cardiff Newport game. I managed to get a chance to have a long sit down with Matt Sherratt and also Tinas De Beer, the new South African fly half. So I've got interviews with them coming out this week, so ahead of that friendly. So things are starting to kick into gear a little bit now. The Scarlets got a press conference on Thursday, which I'm going to go down to. So although obviously all the focus is on the World Cup, we're starting to see the domestic season at professional level sort of kicking into life now. So that's good. It always feels like it's, autumn is properly here then, doesn't it, when it happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, and on any other bombshell news, I've got a book. It's only taken about the 3 years to do, but I've got a book coming out next month. It's entitled Rugby Lives. I mean, it's essentially a collection of interviews I've done with some of my favourite former players of the years, former Welsh internationals, ones who I guess kind of had good relationships with and always enjoyed chatting to, and some people who I tracked down in far-flung parts of the world who I hadn't probably spoken to for 20 or 30 years. So it was really something that started 4 or 5 years ago, I suppose, really. I think Mikey Rea was the very first one I did as a kind of a life and times experiment. And going back to the whole beer theme, I thought I'd try and speak to him about what he thinks about having a beer named after him, the Mikey Rea All Day. So
I was drinking that on the pod 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that is an interesting story. It's all down to something his wife spotted on the way to Twickenham, so you can read that in the book. But yeah, we kind of expanded our chat and just got talking about life. Obviously, he's at Bedford now, and that was kind of the starter. I think I did Rupert Moon quite early on as well, and I realised that there was people who were enjoying reading them, and so I sort of kept on doing it. And of course, COVID hit us all, and we had a long period where there was no rugby. There was nothing to report on. There was no stories. So it was a case that still at the West End Mail back then. What are we going to write about? So I thought it was a perfect opportunity to really sort of kick on and do a number of other articles with former players, and just got the old contacts book out and tracked down as many as I could. It's ended up with about, I think it was over 90 of them I did over the period in time. And then publishers Alolva got in touch with me, said that they would like to do a collection of the articles. And then the tricky bit came, which was getting it down to 25 or 26 in the end, because Chris Wyatt came in at the last minute, one man riot, who couldn't leave him out, so it was up to 26. So that was tricky, and quite a lot of sort of getting back in touch with people and updating and sorting pictures. So it has been a bit of a labour of love, but hopefully it'll be worth it with the finished product and people will enjoy reading it. So yeah, look out for that. All good bookshops next month.
Excellent.
Oh, excellent.
Good luck with it.
Look forward to that.
But just on that, so who's like the furthest away, and who was the best to interview?
I think I'd have to get a map out now, and I don't have an atlas to hand, so you can tell me whether I'm right or wrong. I'm thinking it's probably Mike Spikey Watkins, who lives in Thailand, Bangkok in Thailand. That's a fair old distance. Then Mark Jones, the ex Neath number 8, Ebervale number 8, he's in Dubai. So that's a fair old distance away. I mean, a couple of people actually who, if there's ever volume 2, hopefully they'll go in there, because not everybody could fit in. About some weird and wonderful place. I got hold of Rob Ackerman, I think he was either in Australia or New Zealand at the time. He flits between the Antipodes. Luke Evans, remember Luke Evans, the old fullback?
Yeah.
I believe is the shortest international career of any Welsh player. I think just about him and Lee Jarvis are vying for that mantle. So I tracked Luke down in Newcastle, Australia. He's a dentist out there. And then I got hold of Richard Smith, the old Ebervale and Cardiff scrum half, and he lives in the Canadian Rockies. So yeah, it was some Brent Cobain, people like this. Shane Howarth's in the book as well. So quite a few of them did take quite a bit of tracking down. And there obviously are a few who have been on my hit list, and I still haven't managed to achieve them. So there's a few holy grails out there, which if I ever do get volume 2, hopefully they'll be included in those then.
Fantastic. Cool. Okay, should we move on to Rugby World Cup news? Because I could sit there and listen to Simon's stories, or I'm going to buy the book is what I'm going to do. That's because you can pre-order it on Amazon now, can you?
Yeah, royalties to the normal address.
Yeah, I think that's going to be in my Christmas stocking for this year. Right, let's move on to Rugby World Cup. So injuries this week. Obviously, key injury was DuPont, but he apparently is not out of the World Cup. He's going to have one of these face mask things made to protect the cheekbone. Apparently, he fractured the cheekbone. but he's having one of those protective masks put on.
It's called an American football helmet.
Well, no, it's like a Phantom of the Opera type thing, and it'll be strapped to his head. I mean, that's a fair old hit. If it fractures your cheekbone, would you still want to play rugby, even if it's your home World Cup? I mean, that's insane.
That's the player's decision to make, isn't it? You know, especially when we're talking about concussions and the height of the tackle in the games at the moment, isn't it? You know, with all the yellow and red cards going on, but again, it's player welfare and player safety. So, someone's got to take the decision to say, well, actually, listen, if it is that bad, no, you shouldn't be playing. How much protection are you getting from this piece of kit they're going to be strapping to you? So I don't know. I'm on the fence with this and whether he should be back or not. It'd be great to see him obviously playing in these big games. He's the best player in the world. And it'd be a shame not to have him there. But everyone's been banging on now for the last couple of seasons. Head injuries, player safety, it takes top priority.
It's a maxillozygomatic fracture, by the way.
Okay.
See, that sounds like you know what you're talking about there, Sam. So what's that, man?
It's been the most Googled word in French rugby over the last few days. It's basically the lower part of the cheekbone. It's sort of almost like the area upper jaw, lower cheekbone area. So I mean, you do wonder exactly what this face mask is going to look. People have been suggesting, given he's French, it'd be something like the Man in the Iron Mask from Alexander Dumas' book. I think that might be frowned upon. But there was also famously the one that Harun Ordekwe wore, where it looked more like the kind of thing you'd see, Greco-Roman wrestlers or American college wrestlers wearing. So I don't know if it's going to be that sizable, but I mean, technology being what it is now, they can probably do it. But and you would imagine, in all seriousness, that they have to be pretty stringent in terms of being certain that it'll be fully protected. And he's had
Kevlar.
He's had 2 plates put in there, hasn't he? By all accounts. Yeah. So I mean, in a way, it'll probably be more rigid and secure than before. So I mean, the bottom line of all of this, right, is that he's the best player in the world. It's an unfortunate incident, and it would be very, very sad if it meant the end of his World Cup. And you do hope he can still play some part.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, well, they reckon he'll be back for the quarterfinals, don't they? So yeah, fingers crossed. We'll see where we go from there.
As long as he's there for the final against Wales, it'll be all right, really.
Yeah. So I think Tuesday and Wednesday is usually when the injury updates come out. So there aren't too many obvious injuries at the minute.
Apart from Dan Biggar.
Well, yeah, but they said the same with him, haven't they? He'll be back for quarterfinal time.
That's not a significant injury, though. You'll be fine.
It's a pectoral muscle strain. I've done so many injury stories of the year, and I know when I've done people who've ruptured the pectoral muscle, that's properly serious. And it was an interesting because he looked fairly innocuous. Because I think he made the tackle on the Aussie second row. There was, I think it was Frost or Arnold, one of the two, as he was going through, and it just seemed as if the guy's boot caught him on the sort of upper chest, and he's probably hyperextended then a little bit, and it's strained. But I mean, I think a couple of weeks out is what Gatland has said. So you'd imagine he'd be back in contention for the quarterfinal.
Yeah,
I can't imagine him going, nah, it's all right, I'll go home. I need to rest. I can't imagine that being a conversation that Dan Biggar would have on that. So yeah, we can expect him back at some point. So that brings me to red cards. So being a true Scarlet, Fafita, not wanting to go too long without seeing a colour, Fafita got red carded on against Scotland yesterday. And the guy that tackled DuPont got red carded as well, didn't he? That was the other one.
It was upgraded,
Yeah. So, but thankfully this week there hasn't been that much controversy around cards, is there?
Well, there was the one that wasn't upgraded in the Scotland game, the Tongan winger. You said John Barkley on ITV. He made his feelings very clear. I mean, to me, I've almost given up second guessing these things now, but that ticked red card boxes for me. It was I know that Jamie Ritchie, the ball carrier for Scotland, the captain, was coming down to an extent, but it was the nature of the hit from the winger where he sort of rose up with his shoulder into the face of Richie. And they decided it took a long while, that review. They used every second of the 8 minutes, I think, by the end of it. And the suggestion was at the end, it was the dip of Richie. But to me, again, it comes back to this whole thing where we were always told that if a tackle was never legal or considered to be highly reckless, then mitigation, as in a dip, could not apply. Now, to me, that was never legal because he led upwards with the shoulder and he was highly reckless. So that I see as a red card. Now, I haven't heard any citing of it, so I'm guessing it's going to be backed up. But it does just leave you very confused. I mean, the look on Joe Barkley's face said it all, really, didn't it?
Yeah.
It's not the first time, really. I mean, he obviously had the one with in the first game with Jesse Creel against Scotland as well. So, yeah, perplexed as ever, I'm afraid.
It's one of those things that there's so many different ways of interpreting it. You know, where they talk about it's chest first and then it goes up. And you've got to look at some of them and go, well, how big is that guy's chest? Because there's no way in the world did that hit his chest, you know. And I don't know, there's a little bit of common sense. Like there were a couple of high tackles in the Wales game yesterday, but they weren't dangerous, you know. And the referee did exactly the right thing. Okay, that's a penalty for a high tackle, but it's nothing more, and it doesn't need reviewing because it wasn't dangerous. I think when it gets into that bit where it's that full shoulder contact and it's into the face, or it's that head-on-head contact, then yeah, I guess it's consistency, isn't it? Like you're saying, that was the whole point of the bunker, that the same person reviews every single one based on the same criteria, and it still doesn't feel like that's necessarily right every time at the minute.
I do feel a little bit sorry for Ben Whitehouse because every time that there's a review like this, when he's TMO and a bunker doesn't go with a review the way people think it should, he's the one who's getting in the net. He's not actually part of the bunker. It's a separate sort of site, you know, disciplinary officer in Roland Garros. So yeah, the buttered bread is falling on the floor side down for Ben at the minute. But actually, I think as a TMO, I think he's doing quite a decent job. He's quite clear, isn't he, in the way he explains things to the referee.
Okay, so we'll just have a quick rundown of the scores from round 3. Yeah, it is round 3. So I hate to tell you, boys, Carwyn, Jamie, but you didn't do your predictions on the prediction lead. So, you know, what can I say? It's poor show.
Oh no!
I had Ireland to win by 8.
You can't say that now. The game's
no good now, Carwyn. You can't. No good now.
Fucking predict it now, dickhead.
Well, actually, that was some more controversy. I saw De Villiers put on, I think it was today, I saw on Twitter, where Mark Hansen scoring that try, did his elbow hit the dead ball line first as the ball went down. And there's a couple of replays there suggesting that could have been the case.
Yeah, but they did look at it at the time, in between the try and the conversion, and they said, no, there's nothing to review. So I mean, it was quite obviously a decent try. Anyway, Italy beat Uruguay 38-17. France scraped home against Namibia 96-0. Argentina 19, Samoa 10. Georgia, Portugal 18-0. Did anyone see that game?
I did.
I saw that one.
Yeah.
I've still got it to watch. I was out at the food festival, but it's
gutted for Portugal, actually. They deserved to win that game, I think, you know, but that's the way it goes sometimes, isn't it? You know, they played really well. Georgia weren't firing on all cylinders throughout the whole match and probably deserved to lose. I mean, a draw, well, it would have been the first time in 18 years that Portugal had have beaten Georgia. But there we go.
You've got two tries of the tournament to look forward to, there, Liam, both from the same guy, from Rafael Stotti, the Portuguese winger, who they are two very fine finishers, you know, and it would have been a fairy tale story. And, you know, they were leading with, I think, 2 or 3 minutes to go. Spoiler alert, sorry if you haven't seen it. But then Georgia scored and it was all level. And then Portugal had a penalty to win it. Virtually the last kick. I think it was the last kick.
It was the last kick, yeah.
I mean, they're different, and they have been a real plus. I think along with Uruguay and Chile, to a certain extent, real breath of fresh air in the tournament. And I tell you what, and without going too much into what we're going to talk to you about now, given the state of Eddie's Australia, Portugal will be licking their lips, I would have thought.
Yeah, I was saving that one as well. Okay, so England scraped past Chile. They were lucky, 71-0. South Africa-Ireland game was just... It was brutal. It was like watching something from a Marvel cinematic thing. But so Ireland won that 13-8. But yeah, what a brutal game that was. Scotland beat Tonga 45-17, and then the game we're going to discuss in a lot of detail now. Wales 40, Australia 6. Gentlemen, take it away, because Simon, how did you feel watching that game last night, mate? How was it for you?
Well, you could tell it was big because I had Radio 5 on the phone to me within half an hour wanting me to go on the show. That only happens with something either terrible or fantastic happens in Welsh rugby. And thankfully, it was. I even had Channel 5 on to me today. Would you come on the evening show? They decided to go. They decided to go with someone else in the end. But yeah, it's So you can tell it was fairly momentous. I mean, talking to predictions, I put out. I said one score. I think I actually said 16-15 to Wales. I mean, the bookies couldn't call it before the game. If you looked at them, most of the odds is like I think both on 11-10, completely evens in terms of they were very much sort of hedging their bets, literally the bookies. And I think even Welsh fans who thought Wales had it in them to win were probably thinking, well, a one-score victory, or worst comes to worst, get a losing bonus point, or you lose by a couple, and then can do the business against Georgia. I mean, no one saw that scoreline coming. 40 points to 6. I mean, that's the 46th Test match between Australia and Wales, and that's the biggest Welsh win ever, which puts it in some real historical context. And we'll talk more, I'm sure, about how they did and how they won. But it certainly, I think, would have made the Monday morning commute, for those who still commute and aren't zooming it, would have made it lots of smiles on faces, because it really was a very special night for Welsh rugby.
Yeah, you talk of all the permutations there, and it's probably my own fault, because I kept on reading them, and it put the fear of God into me, And when it was like, it was a 16-6 at halftime or 19-6, I'm still sitting there at halftime going, they're going to come back and beat us. Something terrible is going to happen, and they're going to come back. I just couldn't get that mentality out of my head from previous games when we've played them, and they've come back and just won the game. But thankfully, wow, what a game.
It was a weird one. You talk about that 16-6 scoreline, and you look at then the final scoreline, which is so comprehensive. But if they'd taken that penalty on, I think, 25 minutes, right in front of the sticks with Ben Donaldson, they'd have been 10-9. And up to that point, Australia had monopolised possession. And Wales had been very resolute in defence, but it was a very even game. And they opted to go to the corner, overthrow at the line out. Next minute, you have Jack Morgan pulling off not a 50-22, but a 22-22.
Oh, it was brilliant, wasn't it? That was
extraordinary. And really, Wales had their foot on the throat then for the entire rest of the game, pretty much.
Yeah,
it was as turning points go. That was absolutely huge, and it was it was bold by Australia to go for the corner. But in a game like that, if you look the way Wales were approaching it, Wales were working the scoreboard. Every time they got into the opposition 22, just build a score. And you've got to think that was, well, it did. It badly backfired in a lot of these.
That's it. Wales have been pretty clinical, haven't they? In the 3 games now, they've reached 22 so many times and come away with points. Whereas in times gone by, they wouldn't have. They would have cracked maybe, or they just wouldn't have got across the line. But they've come away with tries or with the 3 points, be it drop goal or penalty. And like I said, they're being pretty clinical at the moment.
So, Jamie, were Wales good or were Australia poor? And how good were Wales and how poor were Australia?
Well, look, I actually think both things can be true at the same time, because, look, I was expecting a really close game of rugby. I was pretty nervous when I got out of bed. It was match day. I was thinking, oh, because you know what Wales's recent record has been like against Australia. We know that. We know the history. But it didn't turn out that way at all, did it? And for me, I was just really impressed with the way Wales controlled the game. You know, they didn't try and force things like they did against Portugal and they sometimes did against Fiji. They just kept their nerve. They were cool and calm. They kept the scoreboard ticking over. And I just thought it was a professional job, very well done. And I was actually slightly discombobulated by how easy it was for Wales because, you know, Wales never make it easy, do they? At the best of times, you know, we're always on the edge of our seat. But it was just too easy, wasn't it? At times, you know, it was just so Wales was so in control. It was really strange watching us dominate this Australia team. And look, Gav Anscombe was named player of the match, and rightly so. I thought he was absolutely terrific. When Bigger came off, my heart was in my mouth a little bit. Now I love Gav Anscombe, but it was just one of those moments, you know, where you think, oh, this could go one or two ways. But I thought Anscombe was absolutely superb, pulled the strings really, really well. Jack Morgan was outstanding, as he has been all tournament. Talupe Faletau rolled back the years. That was like the Talupe of old, wasn't it? Some barnstorming runs. And Ryan Elias, look, I haven't always been a fan of Ryan Elias. I've been quite critical of him in the past. I've actually now had to change my opinion of him because I think he's now becoming one of Wales's most important players because he sorted his arrows out. They're really accurate now. And the work he does in the loose, his ball carrying, is just really important to Wales now. And he's probably Wales's first choice hooker, I would say. You know, I thought Adam Beard proved a lot of critics wrong. He's a Marmite player, isn't he? He gets a lot of criticism on social media, but I thought he put in a really good shift. Nick Tompkins, I think Nick Tompkins has been a big surprise to everyone because everyone was saying beforehand, well, he's not a Gatland player. They don't see him fitting in. And again, he's another player who gets a lot of stick on social media from Welsh supporters. I thought he was brilliant, Tompkins. I actually think he's had a really good World Cup. I just thought collectively Wales were very, very good. And it was a real team effort. And, you know, it felt slightly unfair to single out one player because I thought all of them, I thought all the players were brilliant. It was just a fantastic effort. I was really impressed and quite pleasantly surprised by just how well Wales controlled and bossed that game. I don't think anybody saw that coming today.
What I've kind of thought, reflecting on it today, and it just has settled a bit, and it kind of added to it to me, was that some of the absolute key performances, some of them who you mentioned there, came from players who've been through real adversity. If you look at Gareth Anscombe, you know, obviously he missed the last World Cup, you know, that horrendous knee injury that kept him out of the game for 2 years. Then this summer, he fractured his thumb or damaged his thumb in the training camp in Turkey in July. Meant he wasn't able to feature in the warm-up games. He feared he was going to miss out again. Credit to Gatland for showing faith in him, not only selecting him in the 33, but on the bench. And Gareth really sort of repaid that. I mean, if you think back to the game last night, pretty much his first act was a shot at goal. He just marginally off and it came back off the upright. Yeah. Now, you know, you could understand if his head might have dropped. He's been out for a long while. You know, he's taken flack in the not everybody's cup of tea, but he didn't. He just got 3 minutes later, another kick out on the left, more testing, straight through the middle, and he just kicked on from there. And it was. I said this morning, to me, it was like probably the most complete Welsh performance since the Grand Slam victory over Ireland in 2019. So it was quite apposite that there should be a replica of the try that started that game off with a chip over the top from Anscombe to his number 12. That time it was Hadley Parks. This time it was Tompkins. But we thought that Wales would look to do this thing of chipping away, building the score. But we kind of thought obviously Bigger would be the man doing it.
Yeah,
on comes Anscombe. And I thought the drop goal really summed up his control and the experience he brings. Because Wales were boshing away a bit. I think it was the game was won, I think it was about 10 minutes to go. But they were banging away, not making huge inroads. Probably went through 10 phases. Just went back in their pockets. They were not really getting anywhere. Stick it over. 3 points. Let's go again. Build the scoreboard. Build the pressure. And his all-round game, his control and his kicking out of hand was excellent. I'm really, really pleased with him because he's been through a really tough time. And on the same note, his halfback partner, Gareth Davies. You think about Gareth now, he really fell out of favour, fell out of the reckoning with Wales during the last year of Wayne Pivac's reign. I mean, there were times when he wasn't the first choice, maybe even third choice at times at the Scarlets, you know. But Warren Gatland said last night, he used the phrase, okay, he thought of giving it away, suggesting Gareth was basically going to get up in the hope of playing for Wales again. But he actually, what he did last season, he redoubled his efforts. He was the form scrum half in Wales the second half of last season, played really well, carried that through into the summer. And I think it's 70 odd caps he's got now. I thought that was arguably his best game for Wales last night.
Yeah.
He sort of rolled back the years to the last World Cup, particularly the Australia game. You remember the interception try he scored against the Wallabies 4 years ago, and he was back in that spot shooting role coming out of the line. He pulled off another interception. He was on to people before they realised it. But it wasn't just that. There was the support line for the opening try. We've seen that so many times for him. But what particularly struck me was his game management last night. When he first burst in the scene, Gareth was like a force of nature, wasn't he? Flying around everywhere. And the one thing that was questioned about him was his game management. It was tremendous last night. Pinpoint box kicks for his runners to go on to, raking touch finders over the head and behind people. I thought he was absolutely tremendous. And you mentioned Beard as well. He's had his critics. Tompkins had his critics. So it was great to see perhaps some of the people have questioned or people have gone through difficult times really came to the fore. I thought Adam Beard, brilliant. On his 50th cap, bossed the mauls, called the lineouts perfectly. It was near perfection, near immaculate lineouts with the aid of Ryan Elias. And the final word for that whole front row trio, 66-minute shift for them. 66 minutes. First two penalties of the scrum went against Wales. They sorted it out and took complete control of the scrum. Really, really, really positive.
And I think that domination up front, like you said, after the first 10 minutes, it was a little bit kind of iffy, how the scrum was going and Australia were okay in the line out and that kind of stuff. And then something clicked. And you could just see, lineouts were being driven. And they weren't being driven 5 meters. They were 10, 15 meters. We get caught in a maul and the mauls go in 10, 15 meters. And it just didn't seem like Australia had an answer to anything, particularly up front. And I just thought, like you say, 1 to 15 or 1 to 23 last night was just outstanding. There wasn't anyone there that you could say, oh, they had an iffy bit, or they did this, or they did that wrong. Every single one of them pulled in, and everything for Australia went wrong. They were throwing passes that, 50-50 passes that might put an overlap away, and they're going into touch. They were kicking stuff that, 9 times out of 10 they'd have bounced 5 yards in and gone into touch, and it goes straight into touch. Just nothing went right for them, and everything went right for Wales. So, Jane, what did you think about where Wales won that game last night?
Well, I was just about to talk about Australia because I just want to quickly touch on them for the second part of the question. So they're in absolute crisis, aren't they, Australia? Wallabies legend Tim Horan told S4C pre-match that this was the biggest game Australia have played since the game turned professional. Now, considering this was a do-or-die game for them, I thought Australia were awful. I thought they were really disappointing. They were embarrassed and dominated by Wales, let's be frank about it. I mean, you talked about the things that went wrong there, Lee. I mean, we had a malfunctioning line-out, freaky scrum, missed kicks to touch. It was a disaster, wasn't it? And I'm afraid the buck has to stop with Eddie Jones. And you know this for a fact, Lee. I say before the tournament started on this pod, on several other pods that we did when we previewed Wales, and we talked about our pool, that, the squad selection that Eddie picked was bizarre. And it proved to backfire, didn't it? Leaving out the likes of Michael Hooper, Quade Cooper, and Bernard Foley was a mistake. Eddie puts all his faith in a rookie fly-off, Carter Gord, who was clearly a talented player, but was like a rabbit in headlights. And it was always going to be a gamble, and it backfired. We had Eddie taking him off after 15 minutes against Fiji, and then he drops him for this game. He just absolutely drops him. So his confidence is going to be shot to bits. And yeah, I just think Australia, I don't know where they go from here. And I'm really tempted, we'll talk about later the media reaction and what have you. What do they do now about Eddie Jones with the revelations and the performances? I think Rugby Australia, they've got a big decision to make because Australian rugby right now is in crisis. It was before the tournament started. And I think it's in a deep, deep hole. And we can relate to that in Wales, can't we? Because I've already seen on social media from Australian pundits and supporters, about the state of the game in Australia and talking about cutting the team. Well, that sounds familiar, boys, doesn't it? So I'm very intrigued to see where Australian rugby goes next after this.
Do you know the biggest problem they've got? Having spoken to quite a few people over there in the last 24 hours, most people in the sporting communities in Australia aren't bothered at all, because for Australian Rugby Union to get prominence, they need to be doing really well. They need to be winning. They need to be going for trophies, because they're way behind the Aussie rules and behind the NRL Rugby League, now probably football as well, and cricket, quite a way down the pecking order. And there's really one thing worse than ferocious criticism, and that's apathy. And talking to people down there, the game is like in the sort of early hours, 5 o'clock in the morning as well, so not a lot of people getting up. It just seems to, speaking to people there, it seems to have passed them by. So that's the biggest problem. When people, at least in Wales, when things go wrong, we all moan, don't we? Everyone has an opinion on it, and everyone has an idea of how to sort it. You don't get people generally. You don't say people saying, "Oh, the hell with it! I've had enough. I'm walking away completely." Generally, in Australia, they've got a major problem because if you're not winning in Aussie rugby, then it's hard to get any kind of coverage. It's rugby league, Aussie rules really rule over there.
Well, see, this is what I was going to say about the press. I've seen a lot of people going, World Rugby needs Australia to be playing well and all of this kind of stuff. And I'm a little bit, no. I think one that discredits Wales. I think that, Wales deserved a lot of respect for what we did last night, particularly in defence. I thought I think a lot of that game was won in defence because we just stopped them playing and it took the heart out of them. But then to turn around and say, World Rugby needs Australia, I go, well, actually, no, you earn that right. They didn't earn that right against Fiji. Fiji outplayed them and won that game quite comfortably. Wales outplayed Australia. So to turn around and say, World Rugby is in crisis because there's no Australia in the quarterfinals, well, I'm like, I've got no sympathy for it. I remember back in the dark days, Carwyn, you might have been with me on this, when we went to Cardiff and we watched Wales, Australia, and it's one of the few games where I left early where Campese scored a try right in the last minute. We were getting absolutely pasted. And we were only about 15, 16 at the time. And I was standing outside the ground and having like Australians giving it all of this and, your side's a pile of shit and all of this kind of stuff. And back then...
Fairness, we were back then,
Yeah, but I remember being like 15 or 16 and getting really upset about it and all that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking, do you know what, Australia? Payback. Because you were quite happy to dish this stuff out, and it's chickens are come home to roost now.
You know why there is a problem though. Where's the next Lions tour and where's the next World Cup?
Both in Australia.
Both in Australia, yeah.
That is where it does become an issue for World Rugby. It really does. I mean, if Australia against the Lions, it is a no contest almost. I mean, listen, the Australians, they produce fantastic athletes. But they're in a very low place at the moment. They really are. What's going to happen to Mr. Jones? Heaven only knows.
Well, he has. He was asked the question directly, wasn't he? Will you be? He was asked, "Can you guarantee that you won't be coaching Japan in 12 months?" They didn't say you're going to be coaching Australia. They said guarantee you won't be coaching Japan, and he said, "I'm committed to Australia." So. Yeah, I mean, what kind of coach does that on the eve of a World Cup? I mean, seriously, there's a time and a place for stuff like that. And
the thing is, he's had a lot of flack over the last few months, and he's taken it all personally as well. He's held his hand up and he said, it's my responsibility, come win or lose. And like Gregan was saying last night, after the game, he said, look, Eddie is quite a stand-up guy. He'll deflect away from the team or he'll praise the team. So he is getting a lot of stick, some of it deservedly so maybe, but I think that's a measure of the guy. I think you've got to give him a break. Like he said, he's there to guide Australia through to the next World Cup. I don't know about beyond, and he started to build a young team. Wales are in the similar position. All right, we've got Warren coming back, who knows the background, but we've got a young team there as well, and we're starting again.
Hang on, Carwyn. He said that Australia were going to win the World Cup. That's what he said. He was very prickly to the media, and he told the media, "You're all negative. We're going to prove you all wrong." He told the media to give themselves uppercuts. Yeah. Eddie is totally humiliated because he's now the first coach.
Wales going to win the World Cup. Who's going to tell me I'm wrong?
No, but the point is, Eddie is the first coach now to guide the Wallabies to a pool exit of the World Cup. That's never happened before. I think Eddie's reputation now is severely damaged, and it's almost irreparable. I think, and he is a good coach. We know that, but this was a massive gamble by Rugby Australia to bring him back, and it just hasn't paid off. And he's got to own it. He has to own this. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there are deep-rooted problems in Australian rugby union. You can't put it all on Eddie. But in terms of how he's coached this team, in terms of the squad selection, the absolute crap he was coming out with and being really prickly to the media, saying all this nonsense, he's got no choice but to own it. And he looks an absolute prat now. He does.
So, Simon, you've been the other side of that. You've been sat in those media briefings when you've got someone like Eddie Jones not having a go, but yeah, I suppose he did have a go at the press in Australia, didn't he? How does as a press group, how does that go down? How does it react with people like yourself?
I always got on quite well with Eddie. I had a very good night in Tokyo with him in 2013 on the Wales tour out there, and he was good company. After Japan, if you remember, beat Wales in the second test in Tokyo. I've always quite liked coaches who take you on. I mean, Hansen's the one really who could do it better than anyone. The 1,000 yards there from him, and people like Michael Checker. I quite like them, I quite like the same. I quite like Alan Wynne-Jones, because in that sense, because he would just give you the stare, and he would sort of let you know if you'd asked a stupid question. I don't mind that, to be honest. I mean, but that's all fine and good, and everyone's different in the media room. Whatever you like with the media, it's always secondary to your results. Always.
Yeah.
And, if you're very good with the media, you might be able to handle and deal with the result a little bit better than others. But ultimately, even if the media hate you or love you, if you ain't winning games, there's a finite time to your period there. Graham Henry was like consummate with the media. But with him in Wales, he lost 52-10 to Ireland. Just decided that was enough. Results will always be the barometer. But I've always quite enjoyed dealing with it. Put it this way, right? Whenever Wales played England or played Japan, whenever Wales played a team that Eddie was coaching, you knew if you went to an Eddie press conference, not only would you come back with something decent, but you come back with something decent that the sports editor wanted to use because people knew who Eddie Jones was. He's one of those kind of characters who just does intrigue people because he's quite different, quite quirky in some ways. But I don't want to sound too harsh about him, but I just felt like this campaign, he's almost slightly become a caricature of himself. Feeling. I think part of it is probably because he realizes his young team is struggling. So he's gone out of his way to sort of almost create little spats with the media because he knows that then he becomes the story. So perhaps trying to take the pressure off his team. But I did feel, especially with that departure in the airport, I watched the video of last night's press conference. It's almost become like, Alan Partridge style coaching, the way he sort of deals with some things, some of the comments he makes. And I don't really know where he goes from now with the Australian media. I mean, that part of it seems pretty untenable.
I think they should employ the honey badger as his media man.
Yeah, that would be funny. So let's assume that Eddie makes it to the end of the week, which isn't a given. So we've said a couple of times nobody saw this Wales victory coming. I'll take you back to our predictions on last week's pod, boys, and I said this is going to be a record victory for Wales. We're going to give them an absolute hammering because Australia are just in disarray. And it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I can absolutely see it coming. So I'm sticking by that now. I'm absolutely going that, yeah.
To be fair to you, though, Lee, it's not very often you get things right on this podcast, and you did call that.
Exactly.
So I will let you have that. Throwing enough shit at the wall, someone's bound to stick.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
I'll give you that one.
I'm sticking to that one.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, you should know that a man of Gwent, a former player of Gwent, was really spot on with his prediction, though. Jason Turvey went pre-match Wales 41, Australia 15. So the great man clearly knows his stuff. I didn't think anybody would have gone out on a limb like that, but good old Turvey, he was pretty close with that one.
And he was pretty close with the Scotland-Tonga game as well, wasn't he?
Yes.
I think he said 38-17 or something, I think he put down.
You need to get him on here.
Oh, he's been on.
Yeah. We've had him on. He was great, wasn't he? Fair play.
Yeah.
He was really good.
We were going to follow his club side, weren't we? What's his club side now?
NSD.
NSD.
No, it's NSD.
NSD.
My
Yeah.
local club. Well, used to be my local club. Yeah, NSD.
Yeah. We were going to follow that every week and bring everyone the scores. Well, that lasted 2 weeks. And then we forgot.
You forgot.
I forgot. Right. So let's assume Eddie makes it to this weekend and they face up against Portugal. So 2 questions on that. One, are you supporting Portugal? Are you supporting Australia? And 2, genuinely, can Portugal pull off something against Australia? Simon,
well, I mean, the one thing you know about Portugal, they'll play any ball they get, any ball they will get, and they've proved in this World Cup they've got strike weapons, and the confidence of that Australian side is going to be so low. I mean, why not? Let's be honest. Australia have regressed since the opening game against Georgia. Portugal drew with Georgia. Portugal are full of beans. Australia are down in the dumps. I mean, you'd still expect the Aussies because there are some very top quality players in there. But Portugal, put it this way, they'll fancy their chances a lot more than they would have done a month ago, won't they?
What a shock it would be, though, eh? Oh.
So, are you putting your Portugal hat on Saturday then, Carmen?
I am. I'll always go for the underdog. Absolutely. But I think the permutations there again. I think if Australia do win and win by bonus points, and Fiji could lose to Georgia, maybe pick up a bonus point against Portugal, Australia could still qualify.
I just think what happened to Fiji 4 years ago when they rested the bulk of their team against Uruguay and they lost, and that really bit them. They're so close now to the quarterfinals. I think they'll go strong. Are they Georgia up next for them? I think, or is it
Georgia next? Yeah,
Georgia next.
On Saturday,
Yeah, and they'll know if they get a decent win there going into their last game as Portugal, they're through. I mean, the interesting bit, of course, is Wales have to play Georgia yet, and I noticed Jonathan Humphries was speaking this morning in France, and that although Wales are through, I think there's unfinished business from what happened with Wales losing at home to Georgia in the autumn internationals, and they all want to make a point there. So I'm very, very intrigued to see what kind of side he pieces together. I mean, obviously he's got the benefit now of 2 weeks, so. I mean, I think Big O will probably be arrested. Not sure about Reece Samed, a bit of a worrying limp as he came off.
Yeah.
But generally, they've been quite fortunate. Injuries, there's not been too bad. They've managed to avoid so far, touch wood. So I'm fascinated to see what side he puts out against Georgia.
I think they should go fully loaded. They've got to start building that now and start rolling towards the next game, the quarterfinal. Build that cohesion going forward. Like I said, when Wales play, the more they play together, the better they get once they're on that roll. So get their strongest team out, get the maximum points, guarantee us finishing top of that group, and taking on whoever Pool D throw at us.
Well, it's in Nantes, isn't it, the game against Georgia? Yeah. I mean, I just think that's coming full circle for the horror show against Fiji in Nantes. The last time Wales were there, they bombed out of the World Cup in 2007. So it would be very nice to leave that city on a much brighter note than they did 16 odd years ago.
Yeah.
So, Jane, what kind of team are you expecting against Georgia then? Who would you put out? Because again, Basham came on for the last 10 minutes and was absolutely bloody everywhere. So would you start Basham and give him that, 80 and let him run himself into the ground, see what he can do?
I would agree with Cowan, actually. I think we should pick a strong team for this, just for that cohesion as well and build our momentum, isn't it? What we don't want to do is the selection policy that we did against Portugal. We can't be doing that. We can't be making 12 changes, 12, 30. I don't think that's going to work for us. And I have to say, I have been disappointed with Georgia, actually. I thought they'd make a bit more impact in this pool, and they haven't. I haven't been very impressed with what I've seen from Georgia, so I fully expect us to win and get that bonus point. But yeah, I would be wary of making too many changes. Like, Dan Bigger is going to be rested. You go way up then. Do you stick with Anscombe, reward him for his excellent performance, or do you stick Costello in there? Do you bring in Lee Halfpenny? I think there's scope to make some changes, but I think we'd have to be very careful not to make too many, because I do think cohesion and momentum is very important. And we do need to win. We want to top this pool. That means we avoid England. We're probably likely to play Argentina or Japan, or maybe Samoa, who knows. But I think it's important for Wales to get this win, put out a strong team, make a statement and top the pool.
I suspect Gatlin will want to give Derry Lake some game time. He went on the record saying how disappointed Derry was. It's difficult. He's co-captain. He offers so much around the field with his carrying and his work over the ball. But I guess, as you all know, occasionally the line of throwing has been a bit of an Achilles heel. And those three in succession against Portugal early in the second half that went awry, perhaps counted against him. But I think Gatlin will want to get him back on the horse and get him playing. Because if you can have him finding his way with his lineup throwing, he does offer so much as potentially as an impact player off the bench later in the tournament. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him even maybe start. I also think Jack Morgan's played every minute, hasn't he? He's played every minute.
Yeah,
I do wonder. I think if Tommy Reffel, you mentioned Basham, also if Reffel's fit, because it started off with Reffel as the backup on the bench. So I think he'd want to get him game time as well. So you wouldn't surprise me, say, if Lake started as captain and Reffel was at 7.
7, yeah.
And the other one, then you don't know about the back three, because if Rissam it is a bit, it's difficult to tell what he did. But I think he likes Rio Dyer, and understandably he's done really well. So you maybe see Dyer coming into it. But I think you're right. I think logically you'd want the spine of the side to stay the same, a large chunk of the side to stay the same, but then with the option of, after 55 minutes, giving quite a few people a run out, like Chunzo. I thought was very positive against Portugal. People like this, Nicky Smith, who needs game time in this tournament, I think, as well. So Henry Thomas, he was straight into it. Henry, I do like him, I really do. And, I think that there are a few people there. So, but it's a great position to be in, isn't it? We've got people banging at the door trying to get in the side.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I think the key for the Georgia game is centres, what he does in the centres, because Tompkins and North defensively are starting to click, because Tompkins is pushing the drift, and he's pushing North out, and he's allowing players to cut back in, and Tompkins is cutting them down. So it's really, we've spoken before about where George North's weakness is in defence, and what it's doing is it's accounting for it, but it takes time to bed in. So I'd really like to see that system working again and again and again and again. But then again, I'm also going, Tompkins took an absolute battering yesterday. The reason that Tompkins puts players into so much space is because he encourages players onto him and then flicks a pass at the last minute and gets absolutely mullered. So, yeah, I think you're probably going to need a decent rest. So for me, how they manage that centre partnership going forward is key. Can
I just clarify, Lee? Are you happy that North's playing outside centre?
No, I think he's still. If we're going to put North on the pitch, and this is what I said to you boys on WhatsApp, why have we got Tompkins coming on a crash ball? Yeah, you've got George North standing 5 meters outside him, and you're bringing one of the smallest players on the pitch on a crash ball. Swap them round. If you know that move is a crash ball, bring George North into inside centre and send him on a crash ball, and let him do some damage. And like I just said, I've been back. I watched the game twice today, specifically looking at defence, and that drift defence is squeezing players into the places where we can tackle them. Yeah, and if you actually look at George North, he's great when he's got a straight head-on tackle. And what we did really, really well is Australia worked a 4-on-2 with George North and Zamet about 4 or 5 times in that game. And all we're doing is we're squeezing and drifting them out, and we're pushing them so close to the touchline that the ball's going into touch, or they're having to cut back inside and players are taking it. So we've accounted for that, not weakness, but that weakness in George North's game has been built into our game, and actually his connection with Tompkins inside and with Liam Williams coming behind is nullifying it. But when you look at those 4-on-2s and you go, if that was New Zealand or Ireland, would they just run a straight line, commit George North, and create a 3-on-1 against Zamet, which Australia couldn't do? So that's what I mean by I'd like to see that partnership or that triangle work again. But then I say Tompkins just took battering after battering against Fiji and against Australia. The guy needs a break. So
I think the fact you've got this 2-week break is it makes a big difference. If they were playing next weekend after the battering players have had over the first 3 matches, you'd probably see a lot more changes. I think he's now got the scope to give people. He said that people are going to go away for a couple of days, spend time with their families, recharge the batteries, so you'd be able to go stronger. The other thing you raised there, which is very interesting about the defence, if you think back to that first game against Fiji, although Wales played very well for 65 minutes, Wales missed a lot of tackles. They missed a lot of tackles. Much better on that front. And also the discipline defensively. Considering how much time Wales spent under the cosh defensively, especially in the first half, they only conceded 9 penalties in the whole game. That is fantastic defensive discipline. And what I loved was there was an absolute refusal to allow Australia to cross the line, even when the game was completely won. In the very final play of the last Australian line-out, the replacement wing comes on a good angle, looks for all money he's going to score the try, and who turns him on his back over the line? Jack Morgan, leading by example, 16 tackles, I think it was. So there was a phrase that David Flatman used today. I don't know if you saw it. He was talking about Wales. He said they're a horrible team to play against now, which a lot of Gatland teams have been. Yeah. But he also described them as an organised pack of dogs, which I did quite like. It's kind of all. I never known there was such a thing as organised scrambling, but Wales have made an art form out of it.
Like I say, defence was superb on that. So let's take a little look forward then. So key question now, Simon, I'm going to throw this to you first. How far can Wales go in this competition now?
I'd expect Wales to make the semi-finals now, because I've always said with Gatland, whatever you think of him, he knows how to coach rugby teams, right? And if you give him a group of players for an extended period, he pretty much always brings about improvement. That's always been the case with Wales. They tend to get better as tournaments go on. And it's never more the case than during a World Cup, which is the longest run-in you get to a tournament. He's had them now for 4 months. So it's probably no coincidence that he's now on the verge, I think, well, not on the verge, but he's now in with a very real chance of taking Wales to a World Cup semi-final for the 4th time. 2011, 2019, and now it'll be 2020. I mean, that would be some achievement. Yeah. And it's not a pipe dream. Yes, everyone is going on about the nature of the draw. That's not Wales's fault that they were in the top 4 in 2019. It's just what's happened. And it is a skewed draw where you've got New Zealand, France, South Africa, and Ireland on one side. But you can only play who you're up against. You can only beat who you're up against. And realistically, in the quarterfinals, I think that will be Argentina. I mean, Argentina were improved against Samoa, but I don't think it's the greatest Argentinian team I've ever seen. And I think if Wales play like they did in a large extent to the first 65 minutes against Fiji, and for a huge chunk of yesterday's game, I think they've got the ability to beat this Argentinian side. I would then expect it maybe to be a step too far in the semi-final, but you never know. They're improving, they're progressing. But let's put it this way: a few weeks ago, if I'd have said with real optimism that Wales are going to make the semi-finals, I think a few people would have questioned that. But I think people now are realising it's a distinct possibility.
Mm. Well, someone that did say that Wales stood a really good chance of making semi-finals, Jamie. So
I did.
How are we feeling about that prediction now?
Vindicated, actually. Because I trust Warren Gatland. And let's cast our minds back before the tournament started, okay? Listening to podcasts, reading the newspapers, all the comments on social media, there was a huge consensus that Wales were not going to make it out their pool. The general consensus was it was going to be Australia topping it, with Fiji coming second. That was the general overview, right? We beat Fiji with a bonus point. We've now qualified from our pool with a game to spare. And that's really impressive. If you think about the state of Welsh rugby in the past year or so, it's been a horrible year on and off the field. We were in chaos, crisis, player strikes, you name it. We all know what's happened at WRU. We were written off by pretty much everyone. And Warren Gatland, as he always does, is prove his doubters wrong. So I was always confident we would get to a semi-final because I trust Gatland. He's done it before and he's going to do it again. There's a very good chance that we'll get to a semi-final. And if we do, I think that's an excellent tournament for Wales. I really do. So, I am very positive about Wales. I was before the tournament started. And when Warren said we could do something special, I believed him. A lot of people didn't. I can understand why they didn't, but I believe it because he is, as he's proven time and again, a very good international coach. So Wales to the semi-finals, absolutely. Now, I don't know who they're going to face in the semi-final. I mean, that's where it could end there, isn't it? But like I said, if we get the semi-finals, that represents an excellent tournament for Wales.
Hey, Jim, here's a question for you. If it's England against Fiji in the other quarterfinal, who wins that?
Do you know what? I think England would rather face Wales than Fiji. I think if you asked them, given a choice, I really do think they'd rather face Wales. I think Fiji got a very good chance. I haven't been that impressed by England. I know they've won their pool games, but they haven't played a good team yet.
Well, England,
I want to know.
Yeah, England are now committed to the way of playing a kicking game. I mean, that's what they're going to stick with now. They're going to play a kicking territorial game, and they will try and keep Fiji, whoever they play, pinned down. It's very pragmatic, but you can understand why Borthwick's done it because they were in a bit of a hole. So they're now playing a pretty conservative game, and it's getting results. And they'll be difficult to play against England. I still think this. I would edge towards them beating Fiji, but what do I know?
Well, they could easily make the semi-finals, couldn't they? That's the thing. As poor as England has been, well, before the tournament, yes, they've won their games. Like I said, I still don't think they've played a good team yet. There's a very realistic possibility England get the semi-finals, and dare I say, even a final. I could see it. That's got 2007 vibes written all over it, this England team. That's the thing, isn't it? But I do think when England come up against a good team, that's when I think they're going to struggle. And I hope England play Fiji, because I think that's going to be an absolute belter. And Fiji won't fear England at all, because they know they can beat them. They did it at Twickenham. So they'll be very confident of a result against them, because they know they can do it.
Can you imagine the gnashing of teeth from certain other countries if both Wales and England make the semi-finals and certain other countries don't?
Yeah.
Let me help you out, Jamie. I'm quite an optimistic type of guy, and
some would say deluded, but yeah, go on, carry on.
I'll take deluded, but it's worked for me in the past. Now, Ireland, all this huff and puff, they're going to get to the quarters, but they're going to lose to the All Blacks in the quarters. That is the All Blacks have got a game coming, and whoever's on the end of it, they're going home. And that could be the game. And Wales play the All Blacks in the semis, and the first time in years we win that game. That's the something special come in. And then off to the final. Wales-France in Paris. You hear first.
It's nice to dream, isn't it, Carwyn, I suppose? But we'll have to see what happens, won't we?
I think there's something funny in that cup of tea, Carwyn. Send us the recipe, man. I predicted Ireland at the start of the tournament, and I haven't seen anything yet that will make me change that. But I said at the start of the tournament as well that I thought we'd struggle against Fiji, and also I thought that the way the games fell kind of worked for us, so we knew what we needed to do going into the Georgia game. I've been shocked by just how poor Australia have been, genuinely, and that's why I predicted a massive Welsh win. So yeah, I can see us making. We always have one game in a tournament where we really just fuck it up. And I'm hoping that was the game against Portugal, where it kind of went a little bit wrong, but we still pulled it out the bag. And like I said, this week against Australia, just everything went right. Nothing went wrong at all. There was maybe 2 mistakes in the whole game, and you go, okay. So, yeah, it's not exciting, expansive rugby. It's pressure rugby, it's points-based rugby, but that's what you need to do to win the World Cup. And then we can come home and play the Barbarians and play interesting rugby, hopefully. But, it's winning rugby, and that's what we need to do. So
it's no risk rugby. That's what it is. It's no risk rugby. No messing about in your own area. I mean, Wales actually look at their most threatening attacking-wise off first phase. That's been the case a few times in the Ghana era. Talked about that drop goal. When they actually go through multiple phases, sometimes they kind of lose their legs. They don't have someone to make the huge physical dent that the Boks have and the Irish have. They're very close to the line. They do the pick and go well, but they don't have someone to crash through in its slow ball. So that's why having someone. I mean, the drop goal we're seeing again this World Cup. Yanni De Beer, it's all happening again, isn't it? And it's such an important weapon, and especially when you come to knockout rugby. So yeah, it's lots and lots of good things to come out of last night.
Absolutely. Well, right. Speaking of good things, let's have a little run down the Fantasy League and round up from there. Have you got the Fantasy League in front of you, Carwyn?
I have. I'll tell you what. I'll start off with our team. So down there in 66th place is Harley. He's 10 places behind Jamie, who's on 56 points. Lee, you're on 30 points, and I say 30 points in place 30, and I'm in 22nd. And our top of our league, I'll give you the top 3. We have Capitalo with 2,393 points, Precariat on second with 2,387 points, and Morgan D with 2,317 points.
And
I'm on one in 22nd. I'm on 1,872 points. There's not a lot between the next 10 in front of me.
Yeah, I stuffed that up in round 2. I completely balls that in round 2. But let's finish off on a nice fun one then, because beard and tashes for this week and hair. I have to say, the South Sea Islanders have absolutely excelled themselves at this World Cup. The Tongan and the Samoan scrum halves have both produced a skunk-like hairdo for both scrum halves that I thought was absolutely fantastic. Fair dues to the boys. Some of the weaving and all of that kind of stuff in the Tongan team was just top notch. One of them's got like a completely shaved head and then a little circle on the back.
Oh, I saw that,
with a little ponytail that's about a foot long. And I mean, this is top notch stuff. And big shout out for Welsh player. So Thomas Francis has shaved the mullet. I mean, this is what World Cup success does to you. You spend your entire life with a mullet, and then you get to play Australia and you shave your mullet. And I have to say, he looks a little bit quicker for shaving the mullet. So, fair play to him. So I put a post on social media today with a guy who's got he was a guy in the crowd when we scored the second try.
I've seen him online a few times, like from the week previous as well. He's popped up a couple of times.
With the great big handlebar one that goes down here. I mean, if that guy's listening, fella, we need you on the pod, because that is a top-notch moustache on that. On that note, then, gents, we are done for the evening. We are finito. So Simon, massive thank you once again. Always a pleasure interviewing you.
No problem. And I'll say a happy birthday to one of Wales's mustachioed men, Aaron Wainwright. Happy birthday to him for today.
Yes,
lovely.
absolutely.
Yeah. So how can people find you on social media, Sam?
At Simon Rugg. And you'll find my work various places: Nation Cymru, Rugby Pass, Planet Rugby. Wherever there's someone willing to take my tapping, I'll be there.
Fantastic. So on that note then, gents, we shall call it a night. Thank you very much once again. We'll do it all again next week.
Yeah, thank you, Simon.
Cheers, man. All the best.
Yeah, cheers, Simon. Thank you, mate.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Rap Podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed recording it. Please do rate us and tell your friends, as it really helps us to grow and get better. We'll be back next week with more of the same, and until then, enjoy your rugby.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.